Hi, welcome to today's video. My name is Paul. So this week I'm going to take a very brief look at symbolism. It's nothing more than scratching the surface. But it is an interesting topic, at least I think so anyway. Symbolism, in terms of history, we're talking about France again, and it's primarily sort of late 19th century. So in terms of visual art, there's a lot of overlap between symbolism and post-impressionism. They're sort of happening at the same time, in the same place. Some of the artists who are labelled as post-impressionist, Gauguin, for example, are also labelled as symbolist artists. Some of the other artists associated with symbolism include Moreau, Munch, Gauguin, Klimt, and a bunch of others as well. They all produced very different art styles. So symbolism it's not like, for example, Cubism or Fauvism or Impressionism. Those different movements, the different paintings have some similarity in the way that the artist created the artwork. Symbolism, not so much. It's more about the goal in art rather than the style that you use. So if you look at, say, Edvard Munch's artwork, very different to, say, Moreau or Klimt. They all look very different. But they do have this sort of similar goal that they're trying to achieve. Symbolism started out probably in literature. Baudelaire created a book of poetry, symbolist poetry, and it sort of morphed and transformed and expanded out into other art forms, including visual art. So, I say it's more about the goal, what you're trying to achieve with the art than the actual style itself. So symbolism is about sort of your inner world, emotions, myths, spirituality, rather than depicting external reality. I think, this is a simplification, but I think in art, visual art, there are two broad approaches. On one side, you've got the more traditional, classical, academic approach to art, and the goal, well, there could be several goals, but the primary goal of that approach is to create something that looks accurate. So proportions, perspective, colors, and so on, they're all very accurate, and they resemble the real world. Realism and naturalism are examples of that sort of approach. Both of those art movements appeared in the 19th century, again in France. Naturalism was rejected by symbolist artists because naturalism is, the goal of naturalism is to create something that looks natural, and that's the primary goal. Symbolists, on the other hand, that is not what they're trying to do. So it's not that they're rejecting naturalism because it's wrong. They're rejecting naturalism because it doesn't fit in with their goals, what they're trying to do. So on screen, for example, you've got three examples of symbolist art at the bottom. The left image and the middle image are both by Redon, and then the right-hand image is by Munch. And you can see very, very different styles. And Munch's more abstract, simplified artwork works just as well for symbolist art as more elaborate styles. I say one of the artists, Gauguin, and you can see two of his images on screen, labelled both as a post-impressionist and also a symbolist artist. Gauguin, as well as images to create these symbols, if you like. He also used color. And again, this is something that's interesting to me, and it's something you could consider in your own art, perhaps. It's the idea of why you're using color and what colors you're using. So, I say with more traditional, naturalistic, realistic art, academic art, if you like, the goal is to create something that looks like the real world. So your color scheme, you can't really just, there's not a lot of creativity in that art form, because you can't just use whatever colors you want or you feel like using. You have to stick to blue sky, green grass, and so on. There may be some slight creative license, but very little. Whereas in these other approaches like symbolism, your goal is not to create necessarily something that looks like reality. Instead, you can use things like color in a much more creative and interesting way. It's interesting for the viewer, it's interesting for the artist to play around with these things. And this is why I'm much more attracted to, say, modern art, what's often labeled as modern art, rather than the more classical, traditional, academic style of art, which is it's a bit like painting in a straitjacket, I think. You don't have a lot of freedom. So Gauguin definitely used colors in a very interesting way and a symbolic way as well. So I say, this video, just scratching the surface, but the whole sort of modernist approach, whether it's post-impressionism, symbolism, cubism, it's stepping away from this idea that art just has to be purely representational and accurate, and this idea that you can open up and be more creative in your use of color, perspective, and different things. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching, listening, and hopefully see you again in next week's video.